Welcome to everyone today. Today is 26th of March. We Bangladeshi people are celebrating our 50 years of independence today. In 1971 war, we lost 3 million people. More than 200,000 women were raped. Today we are remembering them. This is our first webinar of WCI, Women Chapter International. And we'll focus our discussion on the transgenerational trauma of rape and our future. So distinguished guest, welcome you again. We'll start with a video. Let me play this video.
বলতে যত সোজা ভাবতে গেলে অনেক ব্যাপার হয়ে যায় সেটা আমাকে বের করা যায় আমি এখানে নারকীয়ভাবে ইয়ে করলো নির্যাতন করলো
Hola, sura mada azinasi, azinai pada abad zurat tatasi, zurat tatai tapi dum biarlah abarati.
It is a myth that rape is an inevitable part of conflict. It is a weapon of war aimed at civilians. It is done to torture and humiliate innocent people.
Aty ku kryven. Dekne e ku morën e kofëmën e kum çu para durve kum çu deri në banesë. Edhe këtë tjetrën edhe atjetën, se këtu pa vedije, adin këtë tjetra që e gjonë, këto pa vedije ku morë këmë qumë banisë, kësë në s'ka di. Edhe kje tjetra, kish pas në shpirt aty, në venën e gjarjes. Edhe na dekne i na konë, po zëti s'na kalon me dekë. Na kalon gjollë për gazet këtu.
And one night we were hiding there. One night they came to kill, and where we were hiding, someone knocked on the door, and they asked us to come out, made us line up, and I remember one of the aunts offering money so they can spare our lives, and they agreed. They said, "Yeah, you give us money, nothing will happen to you," but it was a lie. She gave them the money, and she was the first to be killed. They killed her daughter who was holding on to her, and then it became a chaos. We all start running. We realized, no, they're not going to spare our lives. They killed the other aunts and the children, and then for me, I got hit in the back of my head with like a baseball bat kind of weapon. And I got hit in the back of my head. I fell to the ground, and I pretended I was dead. And in that process, when I was still on the ground, a young man was killed, and this young man used to work for our home, but he was also a Tutsi. They killed him, and he fell on top of me. And so I lay there, I pretended to be dead. I tried my hardest so they would not notice that I was still alive, I was still breathing.
Now I'll hand over this session to Shumu Haq. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us on this morning. Today is March 26th, and as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh, we also have to remember all those who gave their lives for the independence of our country. And we are also remembering those women who were raped by the Pakistani Army during the War of Independence. Now, the number of those women are disputed because not all of those cases were reported. The number is reported to be somewhere between 200,000 to 400,000. And all of these women were tortured, raped, traumatized as a policy of war systematically by the Pakistani Army. So today, we dedicate this event to them, to their memories, and to all those who suffered through the severe trauma of rape all across the globe as they suffered through violence during the time of war in their own countries. Today, we have with us our wonderful panelists from Bangladesh, Rwanda, we have a Polish American with us, and we also have somebody from Kosovo. Now, the one signal chain that is tying with us together is that all of us, in one way or another, are working with the same goal of helping those who have suffered through the trauma heal. And let us introduce you to our panelists today. First of all, let me introduce you to Viola Rebecca. She possesses in-depth knowledge of cultural anthropology and psychology of people. As a contemporary psychoanalyst, she deals within the context of their respective cultures. Her research focuses on the theories of cultural and psychoanalytic development in many regions all over the world. She's interested in understanding different societies and people using available psychological tools. Her area of interests are related to sexual abuse and its trauma-related consequences. Her variety of experiences working with people are being utilized for the creative development of humanitarian organizations, workshops, classrooms, and nonprofit organizations. Knowledge of foreign languages allows her to understand people and their cultural backgrounds. She speaks English, Polish, Russian, Swahili, and French. Lisa Ghazi is a British Bangladeshi writer, theater worker, award-winning filmmaker, and co-founder of Kamala Collective. Ghazi is the concept developer, co-writer, and performer of the play Birangana, Women of War. Ghazi recently directed a multiple award-winning feature documentary, Rising Silence. that sheds light on the lives of sexual violence survivors in the aftermath of the Liberation War of Bangladesh. Since 2017, Ghazi has started working with Global Survivors Network, CIMA, established by Nobel laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege's foundation, the first ever international public address by two Birangana women of Bangladesh, Anwara Begum and Jabeda Khatun, was made possible by Ghazi's efforts. They joined fellow survivors in an international call at The Hague for global reparation schemes to address the consequences of rape as a weapon of war. Ghazi is now working on the collective memory group of SEMA. And we must also introduce the latest work by Lisa Ghazi, Hellfire. I just received it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. And then we have our Rwandan genocide survivor. She's also a writer, Jane Celestine Lakin. She wrote this wonderful book, A Voice in the Darkness. She overcame a childhood of genocide, abuse, and orphanhood. She inspires audiences with her capacity for forgiveness and serves as testimony to the power of human resilience and perseverance. Few people in history have experienced the horrors of genocide and Holocaust and lived to tell their story. Far fewer have the strength and courage to relive those harrowing moments so that others may understand the depths of its injustice and learn from it. Jean Celestine Lakin is one of those extraordinary, courageous people. As a human rights advocate and orphan, Ms. Lakin has been blessed to serve as an adoption counselor and helps vulnerable children by shining a light on an extremely ominous time in human history. Passionate about the unmet needs of children, she founded a not-for-profit organization, 1 Million Orphan, that raises money to provide care such as food, clothing, school supplies, counseling, and medical care for orphan children around the world. Some of the proceeds from her book are donated to the organization. She has also told us that she's currently working on her new book, and we're really looking forward to it. Then we have with us Consoli Nishimwe. She is an author, and this is her book, Tested to the Limit. This is her testimony as a genocide survivor from Rwanda. She's an author, a motivational speaker, and a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Today, she is a committed speaker on the genocide, a defender of women's rights, and an advocate for other survivors. She released her memoir, A Story of Pain, Resilience, and Hope. She currently lives in New York. And of course, we have with us Dr. Feride Rishiti. She is the founder and executive director of the Kosovo Rehabilitation Center for Torture Victims. Through almost 2 decades of research and advocacy, she has secured access to healthcare and justice for civilian victims of Kosovo war. In 2017, her advocacy led to a landmark government decision to fund pensions for Kosovo's victims of wartime sexual violence, setting a precedent for government engagement in efforts to deal with Kosovo's wartime past. She's a medical doctor, and as a doctor, she began treating civilian victims of war during active conflict in 1999. She was among the first doctors to recognize the need for treatment of psychological trauma for refugees fleeing the violence, particularly among women and minority groups. She pioneered a multidisciplinary approach to addressing the needs of conflict victims and envisioning a single organization to provide psychosocial support. legal assistance, medication, treatment, and policy advocacy. Dr. Rushiti also played a key role in developing Kosovo's legal framework for the human treatment of prisoners and other detainees, advocating successfully for the independent monitoring of detention facilities. In March 2018, Dr. Rushiti received the US Secretary of State's International Women of Courage Award in recognition of her work with survivors of torture and human rights advocacy. Throughout her career, she has received numerous other prizes in recognition of her human rights work with survivors of wartime sexual violence, as well as other marginalized groups. So today, all of our panelists will discuss and try to find this universal connection between the trauma that has plagued survivors from all over the world at different times of our history. And throughout from their experience, we will try to come to an approach that will help us move forward toward an universal approach to heal those traumas. We will try to come up with ways in which we can assist those survivors heal and to rehabilitate them in our societies, and to maybe find a way so that the shame and the stigma is taken away from the survivors and is put back to the place where it belongs, to the perpetrators. So let us begin our discussion today with Lisa, as it is our 50th anniversary of the independence of Bangladesh. So we'd like to discuss the case of Biranganas. And as Lisa has worked for many, many years with them, Lisa, if you could kindly share your experience working with the Biranganas, please.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm thankful to be part of this today's discussion. It's a very urgent and timely discussion. Before I begin, I'm so happy with the panelists I'm here with. We are on a same mission, and it is lovely to see all of you. If I want to begin my journey with survivors of Bangladesh, more than a decade ago, a dear friend of mine took me to a women's center near Dhaka. It is like 5 hours from Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. And the women's center's name was Uttoron Mohila Sangstha. We went there to visit 21 Birangana women, sexual violence survivors. And suddenly, a strong image chased me like remnants of a nightmare. I came to know about the Birangana women when I was 17 years old from my father. My father was a freedom fighter, and we siblings, we grew up hearing heroic and harrowing stories of our liberation war. And he told me that he had witnessed hundreds of raped women and girls standing back to back on a convoy of trucks, like sacrificial animals. They were rescued from army barracks and rape camps after December 16, our Victory Day. And this image of mute, faceless Birangana women of Bangladesh stayed with me forever. As Shumu was saying, that it was a systematic campaign of genocide and rape of 200 to 400,000 women and girls were carried out by the Pakistani Army and their local collaborators as part of the Pakistani Army's war strategy during the liberation war of Bangladesh. And this conflict remains one of the first recorded cases of rape used as a weapon of war in the 20th century. In Bengali, Birangana means brave woman. And this was the honorific granted to the victims and survivors of mass rape by the interim government of Bangladesh only 6 days after the war ended. But in reality, these women were hidden and forgotten for decades by society in which rape is considered to be a source of shame for the victims, never for the perpetrators. When I met them for the first time, I did not have any plan to create even the theatrical piece, Birangana Women of War, that we created from our company Kamala Collective at the time, let alone a film. But with their permission, I went to see them with a small camera crew to record their accounts. I filmed their interviews to hold on to some of their stories, maybe because I was looking for them without even consciously realizing it since I was 17. And I thought there must be many like me who want to know them. As I look back now, I believe on that very day, the journey of Rising Silence, the feature documentary film that I developed and directed, began. How women have dealt with the emotional trauma of sexual violence and social stigma can be seen in Rising Silence. The relevance of this documentary is apparent as women continue to bear the brunt of sexual violence in armed conflicts to this day. The film sheds light on the lives of 9 sexual violence survivors of Bangladesh. They are Birangana Jharna Bushu Haldar, Birangana Amina Begum, Birangana Muklesa Begum, Birangana Malika Begum, Birangana Tepri Bewa, Birangana Shurjo Begum, Birangana Raju Bala, Birangana Chaindao Marma, and Birangana Rijia Begum. In the midst of the faceless numbers, I wanted to see that woman who had a childhood, has a name and a story to tell. I began this journey to make a film about some of the extraordinary Birangana women I was fortunate to meet. But at the end of the journey, I realized that their sharing of their lives and how they had tried to heal has shown me how to find myself in the process and what I am capable of as a woman. I have met some 80 Birangana women all over Bangladesh. And I spent time with them. I stayed with them for a few days, a few of them. And I tried to understand their journey, their lives. And I realized that the way we want to see them, society, the way we want to see them see them as raped women, as if their life has stopped there. But when I met them, when I started spending time with them, I realized that whatever happened to them, that horrific incident, that horrific experience does not define them. That's not who they are. They are a whole woman, you know, who had a past, who had a life, and who wants to enjoy life, who wants to enjoy, you know, beautiful things about life, you know, our children's love, our going for a holiday, singing a song. It's there in them. So when I was making that film, Rising Silence, I realized I want to see that person behind the statistics and label. Because with statistics and label, we miss out the humanity. We don't see the faces behind those labels. I wanted to see the faces. I wanted to you know, talk to them, hold hands with them, you know, and that journey actually given me a sense of purpose and sense of, you know, belonging in a very odd way, you know, as a Bangladeshi woman. I find them as my legacy, you know, and they are so strong, so resilient, so amazingly, you know, loving after all these. That gives me, that makes me stronger to realize that We are capable of that. We are not defined by something that had happened to us. So that was an amazing, lesson, if you like. I have gratefully received from them.
If I may, one of the reasons why they could not be, even though the idea of giving them the Birangana title was behind giving them an honored status in the society, it kind of ended up backfiring. Kind of ended up isolating them within the society, where even though they got this certain pension and all those benefits, their families took those benefits and ended up abandoning them in many cases. Do you think in that way, apart from them being brutalized by Pakistani Army, they were then again stigmatized by their own families, and as we were doing our research, it kind of appeared to be an universal case as well, that wherever the rape was used as a strategy for war, it could be used as such because of that notion of honor being used in accordance with the virginity or the physical chastity of women, so that if they could be quote unquote defiled, their family would disown them. And do you think that played a role in the case of Bangladesh's Biranganas as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, and we say that very kind of very we are sometimes very proud to say that sexual violence survivors in Bangladesh, they were taken back in their families. Quite a large number of them were taken back in their families, but when you actually talk to them, they were taken back, yes, but as long as they don't talk about it. So that is not accepting, is it? So as long as they do not say us a word, they are taken back in our homes and our society. And absolutely, I mean, if you think about it, that the stigma around sexual violence is monstrous everywhere, as you said, and that's true. But the status shoti, which is virgin, which means virgin or faithful, that word actually determines the moral character of any woman in South Asian culture. And she's judged by it. The worth of a woman depends on it. So she's labeled as impure or sinful when she is raped, despite crimes being committed to her. So this is very prevalent in our society, in our patriarchal society, because women are responsible for bearing the burden of honor of a family in a patriarchal society, and shame is inflicted upon them for failing to carry that burden. It's like a vicious circle, and they're not. And if you think about it, we women are nothing but bodies, sexual objects, reproductive genders, and our whole experience is defined by it. So where women are seen as male property and custodians of male pride, so defiling is a painless method of defaming actually their fathers, brothers, or husbands. So if you're raped, you are actually dishonoring your husband. So you're responsible, and you are the one who are being, shamed. So this is not only in South Asian culture. It is almost everywhere. I mean, if you think about it, just last week, I think, last month, a couple of weeks back, a woman was murdered in London by a police officer. And when all the women, it happened just very recently. And while the women were coming out with their stories, sharing that how unsafe they feel in public places, in the streets, the police officer, what they did was they went to that area, and they went to houses, saying the women in those houses that they should not go out in night times.
It is.
Can you imagine? Here, so this is how we need to bear. I mean, for someone else's action, we are being punished. It happens everywhere.
So before, thank you for the insight, Lisa. So before we move on, I think you had shared with us a couple of clips. So we'll end the session on Bangladesh with those valuable clips from you. Thank you so much, Lisa, for.
I think I sent one clip, maybe.
Yeah, okay, so we'll look at those clips where the Viranganas are sharing their experiences. So let's go and watch those. Thank you.
I grew up listening to my father telling me stories about the liberation war of Bangladesh. One story never left me. He told me that he'd witnessed hundreds of raped women and girls standing back to back on a convoy of trucks, like sacrificial animals. They are the Virangana women. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to know them as they are, and beyond the term, Virangana.
তারাবাতি জলে রে তারাবাতি জলে মানুষ নামের কলে রে তারাবাতি জলে
আমি তো দেশের মানুষ বাংলাদেশের চারটা কানি এক কানি তো আমরা
কি বিচার করবে না বিচার করবে আল্লাহ করবে মানুষের বিচার চাই না ওদের থাক দুনিয়া ঠকাতে হবে খাতাতে হবে নিন্দাতে হবে
তারাবাতি জলে রে
জবনকে বাঁধা যায়
পাতার পানি কচুর পাতা পানি হলে কিন্তু ওয়ারই জন্য প্রাণ চাইতেছে প্রাণ আসতেছে
দেখতেছি তো আমার দেশ তো স্বাধীন করতে হবে তখন তো আমাকে বাঁচাইতে হবে যে কই হোক হিন্দু হোক আর মুসলমান হোক কিবা সতার হোক
তারাবাতি জলে রে তারাবাতি জলে
আরো খেলার বাকি আমার রয়ে গেছে আমি আরো খেলবো যদি আমি কোনো ইতিহাস না পাই আমি কোনো ঠাঁই না পাই কোনো ইতিহাস না পাই
মানুষ নামের কলে রে তারাবাতি জলে
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that very moving trailer. I really, we would have hoped that in 50 years we would have made some difference in these women's lives, but there's a lot of work still left to be done, and I hope that we will accomplish that in the future. Thank you, Lisa. So now I would move into our survivors from Rwanda. Let us start with Jim. You'll need to unmute him. So let's share a little bit about your experience and the resilience of human spirit and why it is so important to give voice to those who don't have the voice, and why it's so important to share the story of survival from that trauma.
Thank you so much, ladies. It is it's an honor and a privilege to be able to have, again, this platform, to have this place where we can share our stories. There's a quote that by John Hagee that says that our stories are the key that can open someone else's prison. And I believe that to be so true. I, as a child, before I dive into my experience, it's been now April, it's going to be 27 years since the genocide against the Tutsis. For me, I was living happily and peacefully with my family in a beautiful country, Rwanda, at that time. And I lived in a countryside where it was nice and quiet. And to some people who have never been to Rwanda, you might just not imagine what that looks like. It was just, and I want to share a couple pictures before I dive into my story. Ms. Shumo, if you can share those pictures, especially like the first four, would be great. So, but I was really, in that time, I was surrounded by so much love, so much kindness, not just for my parents, but my extended family members, with the people that we saw as neighbors, but also as part of our extended family. So if you take a look at this, it's just, look at that, those of you. Actually, I lived closer to this area. So imagine waking up every single morning and seeing such, view in the background. Now, Rwanda, after the genocide, actually during the genocide, the country was just completely demolished, was just turned upside down. So what you're seeing here is rebuilt of the country again. So that's the capital city. I want people to know that, when you think about Africa, people think about the little huts or people living in these like little tiny places. Rwanda is a developing country. And the next picture shows actually, again, the capital city of Rwanda. So it's lively right now. So Ms. Shum, if you want to go ahead and exit out of that one, that would be perfect. The last one I'll share will be a picture of my, my book, of course, and ask some people to follow me and connect with me. But I lived in this place where I was so connected with so much love. You can go ahead and exit out of this one if you stop sharing. So I lived in this place where I felt like I was given so much guidance. My 9 years was really what I felt like every child want to live and see their parents as long as they can have them, right? But for me, I feel like my parents gave me the tool to deal with what was coming. Because of the love that they shared with me, I don't think after surviving the genocide, if I did not receive that kind of love and guidance, I feel like I would have crumbled a little bit. So, my parents had their own businesses. I felt like my future was set, was bright, but life had its own plans, as it always does, right? So in 1994, my country, my world, my family, they were decimated. The program of organized killing campaign was put in motion. Machetes had been ordered. 500,000 machetes had been purchased. The militiamen had been trained. They were organized and trained to use those machetes. A lot of people think, because I've been speaking to young people, they think, machetes, what do you use those for? They were really used to dehumanize. The propaganda was used to dehumanize the Tutsi people. The machetes were to wipe out an entire ethnic group of Tutsis. But when we talk about a war against Tutsis, the weapon that we don't talk about is rape. That was used. In every war, women are abused, and men, boys and girls. But mostly young girls and women are put in situations that are just horrific. For me, I remember on April 7th, I was sent into, hiding for almost 3 months. I was just hiding from one bush to another with my 3-year-old twin sisters to the Entita. And not only that was in itself a challenge, I watched my father being killed with those machetes and clubs. At the age of 9, we went from being called the Tutsis, a group, an ethnic group, a branch of human family, to being referred to as cockroaches, snakes, just like they did in Jewish Holocaust, right? So we went from being a branch of human family to all those things except humans. I was hunted, I was captured, I was raped. In Rwanda, they were between, and again, I'm giving you the statistics, but keep in mind, because of the shame and the guilt that comes with rape, many women don't report that. And it's because the way the society has, from globally, structured a way of women telling their stories and not being, listened to. So there were about 250 to 500,000 women raped in the genocide. That does not include me, because I don't remember myself being counted in these numbers. So there's so many more women who were gang raped, who were raped individually in Rwanda. And so I share my story in hopes that when I was raped, and I had multiple rapes, the constant thing that I was told was, you can tell as much as you can, nobody's going to listen to you. That's so common. But this is what I told myself, because of the confidence that I was given by my parents, and every parent that is listening to this, I want you to, if your child comes to you, believe them. Is because the shame and the guilt that comes with rape is so heavy that we rather just scoop it under the carpet and keep it there, but it shows up somewhere else. So believe your children. When I was told that nobody's going to listen to me, I told myself that I would tell until somebody in the world listened to me. I would tell until somebody listens to me. And the abusers, the perpetrators, tell you that don't tell or keep it a secret because they know it is shameful. What they've done is shameful, not just for you as a victim, as somebody being abused, for them too. It's something they don't want to be associated with. And so the fact that they tell you not to tell is to keep this cycle of abuse going. I told because it was healing for me. And I remember at the beginning of telling what happened to me, I felt like I was going to lose it. But there's also hope. As you introduced all of us, we have people who are professionals to help. Now that I'm speaking in schools, I'm speaking through different organizations, I encourage people to seek for counseling if possible. Yes, you might crumble, but living with such shame and guilt, shame that is not actually supposed to be yours. It wasn't because of the skirt you were wearing. It wasn't the fact you were drinking. It wasn't because, men need to take responsibility. Women who rape other, men or women, need to take the responsibility. We need to tell to break this cycle. Yes, we are a small group of people right now, but our voice, it is so powerful. The children that I get to speak to who come to me for the first time, sharing with me that they have been, also abused. They have never told anyone, but just because I had the courage to share, they too can share their stories. So again, our stories are that power that opens other people's, prison, and we need to continue to share. We have to continue to tell our stories, the stories of those who cannot speak. Because after the genocide, I was actually human trafficked in another country as a 9-year-old. I get to Congo, and I was going to be sold into marriage. as a 10-year-old at that time. And when I ran away from Congo, because I knew I didn't want to be married at 10 years old, didn't want this to define what happened to me, to define the rest of my life. Get back to Rwanda, and every single adult, my family had been killed. I just descended into the worst depression. And at that time, I didn't really know and understand what depression was. I didn't have the definition to that. But I knew I was, this dark cloud was hovering over my head. I began having a conversation with God, because that's like the closest being that I felt like I can communicate to after losing everyone. So God, I don't believe you saved me to live in such pain. I don't believe you saved me. The genocide took 3 months. Over 1 million people are dead. I wasn't being chased by machetes. I wasn't being hunted, but I was just in this dark place because of what I've seen and what I've experienced. So I said, no, I don't think this is it to life. I asked God to give me the strength to forgive. And forgiveness, it took time, took some years to forgive. But forgiveness gave me the ability to be able to sit here with you ladies, to be able to tell my story. It also get, there's a lot of misconception that, if you forgive somebody, you're giving them, you're letting them off the hook. There's another misconception that when you forgive somebody, that somehow you're minimizing what they've done to you, that it was okay. That's misconception. So finding a way for me to live, I had to find it really look inside of me, what I can do to release that much pain, to get the blame off me as a survivor, to the people who have committed the crimes. And once I forgave, really, there was an opening of opportunities to have the voice that I have today. So ladies, I encourage anyone who's listening, anyone who's seeing this, I encourage you to speak up, but also to find it in your heart to forgive, because living with bitterness and anger, it only hurts us. I remember the words of Nelson Mandela as he was, released from prison. He was in prison in South Africa for 27 years. And he said, as I was exiting towards the gate, towards my freedom, that I knew if I did not forgive the bitterness and the anger, I'll still be in prison. That's us. We forgive so that we can live the life we deserve to live. And that's what I want to live and encourage everybody to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. It's very, very powerful experience indeed. I hope this will continue to inspire others to come forward and start their healing process as well. So now we move on to Consoli. I was watching your interview earlier, and one of the things that I'd like to know from you is, as you were going through, you went through a similar experience, but the one thing that I want to know from you is how, in spite of going through all those things, how did you maintain your humanity throughout it all? Like even when they took everything away from you, they took your humanity by raping you, by traumatizing you. If you could just share that, I think that will be a powerful lesson for others as they move on.
Thank you so much, really. It's truly an honor for me to be here with you ladies and hearing all of you. It's really incredible and amazing. Thank you, Jean. I love you so much. Thank you for being so brave and strong. You are my inspiration, and I'm so happy to be here with you and talking about an important topic, which is not easy topic to talk about. So, and being here for me as a survivor, like Jean said, well, and talking about what we've been through, it's not very easy. And we were young, we were teenagers. I was 14 years old. And for me, after, going through what I've been through, and of course, for me, I was 14 years old, and I lost my family members, my dad and my 3 younger brothers. When I was raped by a neighbor, and unfortunately, I discovered that I was HIV positive after being raped. So as you can imagine, I was living with everything Jana was mentioning, the shame and the guilt and the pain, and having something that reminds me every day what I've been through, the consequences. So like many other women live with. So, and it was hard for me as a young woman, and I didn't know how I was going to live every day, whether I was going to be a happy girl I was before, because I was very fortunate before to have a family that loved me, that gave me love and affection. I felt like, how am I going to be that girl again and be happy and enjoy life despite all the things I've been through? So fortunately, I survived with my mom, and who is one of my heroes I have in my life. And to have her, it's really has really helped me so much, because she's been a strength, a pillar of my strength. So crying on her shoulders whenever I needed to cry, even though she was carrying a lot of pain within herself, to see what I've been through herself, and it's losing kids, a husband, family. It was not very easy for her just to live through that. And one thing I've learned from her is to never give up. And she constantly reminded me to never give up. So, and also to keep loving despite the pain we had. So I learned from her how she cared the kid, because she was a teacher. She went back to teach, and she cared for kids of the people who have murdered our family, many of the Tutsis, some of the families who have done horrible things to us. And to see her showing love and teaching me to never have hatred. And for me, it was incredible. So, and at the same time, I was that girl that was going through a lot of pain within myself. And one thing also I did, I never gave up. So I hold on to my faith in God, which is really important in my life. And my faith really played a big role in my journey of healing. So, and at the same time, when I decided to share my story, that was the beginning also of healing. I felt like it was a load lifted off my shoulder. So I carried this pain within myself so long, and I didn't know how to share it in the beginning when I started, because of the guilt and the shame. But when I had the courage to do that, I realized how my life, I was changing. So how I started feeling like I opened door to being happy again. So, and for me, when I kept pushing myself, even though I was carrying that pain within myself, that's when I realized that I needed to also continue sharing the story to others, so that I can encourage them to do the same, so that they could, the same way Jean is doing, so that all of us, to share our stories, really help other fellow survivors to do the same. So, because there are many of them who still live with this pain within themselves, and they've never shared with anybody. So we get a lot, some of them even who share with us privately, the pain they've carried many years, 27 years. So, and for me, I feel like we are here for our purpose. We speak on behalf of so many. So those who are no longer here, and those who are not able to share their stories. So it's very important that we support each other in this journey, and making sure that we are strong and we begin our healing journey. So for me, I feel like it's my duty to do that, and also to, and I've been also feeling much better, because the more I shared, the more I felt like my healing was getting better. So, and now I feel like life is worth living. I enjoy life, in the way that I never thought I was going to enjoy life. And my mom also, indirectly, she felt, somehow she got healed, because when I began my healing journey, so we kind of, did all, the same time, and it kind of helped her also to feel better within herself. So I'm truly grateful that if I didn't do what I did, I don't think I would have been here with you. And I think it's important for us. I like this quote from Maya Angelou. We may not control all the events that happen to us, but we are not determined by what happened to us. So I just want to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Consulee. That was very, very inspiring. And I hope it will inspire other survivors to find that lost humanity within themselves. Now we move on to Dr. Rushiti, who has been dealing with and working very closely with torture survivors. And I understand that you have been taking a holistic approach to working with them instead of just dealing any one aspect of their rehabilitation. While working with them, what kind of legal obstacles or bureaucratic obstacles have you had to overcome? If you could just share with some of those.
Well, hello, ladies. Thank you for sharing your experience, Counseling and Jocelyn. It was really very inspiring and very powerful for us and for Kosovo audience. There are a number of people who are following this event. I would like also to thank you, and I really feel privileged to be part of this event organized from Women Chapter International. I want also to be with you in this very crucial event, 15th anniversary of independence of Bangladesh, as well as marking commemoration of genocide in Bangladesh, which is highlighting the need to remember this atrocity in order to prevent such an atrocity to happen everywhere. So coming from a country who just passed from a war 20 years ago with a lot of atrocity, missing people, killing more than 20,000 women, men, and girls who were raped during the war. I think establishing one organization which will offer a holistic approach to survivors of sexual violence, but as well as other torture, it was more than needed. I used to be a young doctor when the war started in my country, but in another country, because the Kosovo in that period of time was closed, education were not accessible for Kosovo Albanians. So I moved to the neighbor country, Albania, and during the wartime, I met for the first time a rape survivor. I met people who were wounded. I met parents without children, children without parents. All of those stories touched my heart, but hearing rape survivors, hearing their story, hearing how their body was misused and the power was misused for certain purpose, it was really very touchable. And after, when I returned in my country, even though in my career I was prepared to be a gastroenterologist, I decided to establish a center when survivors of sexual violence would have, first of all, free space and secure space to share their story, as well as to benefit from other service. So when we established the organization, we didn't have any legal background to establish the organization. We registered as NGOs and we was fighting constantly survivors of sexual violence to be recognized. But due to the stigma, which already was shared from my previous respective colleagues, and taboos and paradigma in our societies, other war categories as veterans, invalids, missing people, they had it the law, they had some recognition from our state. But survivor of sexual violence was unspoken. It was everything that was related with them, it was shame and blame. So we had to fight for 15 years together with other civil society actors, with survivors, with institutions, with international community, artists and media, in order to ensure some legal recognition first, as well as to create a space for survivors to speak publicly. It is so important to have holistic approach because also consequence of such a crime is tackling all dimension, life dimension of the survivors. Being survivors after such an act, I mean, the rape, it's only one act, but after you experience such a terrible torture, it's very hard to live with them. First, it's due to the stigma, due to the lack of support in the family and prejudice that are created towards you. You lose the opportunity to continue the life normally. A lot of psychosocial and mental consequences, domestic violence also to certain case. So majority of those women, they asked the perpetrators to kill them during the act because life after, of course, produced a lot of consequences. Therefore, I think when we consider holistic approach, I think we have to work in multi-dimension perspective, starting from empowering survivors from psychological perspective, supporting them with the social means and legal means, as well as working with the institution to bring policies and laws in place. Because without having ensured policies and laws in place, this kind of wound will belong only to women NGOs, which were quite small compared with the needs that survivors have. In that perspective, as an organization, together with other organizations, we reached finally, after 15 years, to push our state to recognize victims, rape, survivors of rape. It was not an easy task because when we opened that this taboo in our society, it was a lot of resistance also from the institution. It was a lot of deny. They didn't want to recognize. Even sometimes in the parliament, different MPs said it's not possible to verify them. After 15 years, we need gynecologists to do some examination. They forget that part of such a crime, they were also boys and men, not only women. But we had to fight and work constantly, persistently, in order to create a space. And finally, after 15 years, we reached to have some legal basis and survivors to have some support from the state.
Thank you, Dr. Rishiti. It was an honor having you among us as well. And like Shupriti was saying earlier, I think we need to do this on a regular basis because it is too much of a powerful topic to just have all the aspects discussed in just one event like this. So we look forward to having you over in the future as well. Thank you very much. So now we would go to Viola Devi, who has been the woman behind this event coming together in many ways. She has been helping us coordinate this. She has worked with all of you individually, has generously given us her time and her knowledge. So she will share her family's experience, her family members' experience during the Second World War, and then also her professional knowledge on the topic of transgenerational or intergenerational trauma of rape survivors and how it gets passed on to the descendants. So here she comes, Viola.
Thank you, Shomo. Thank you, everyone, for everything what you ladies said. That is really powerful and it's touching me deeply and connect me to my, of course, family past and my family story. But also, I feel really connected to your experience, and I feel so honored and I feel so fortunate. I know you personally. I know your story. I know you experience. When I was listening to you, Constantly, I was thinking like I was really lucky to meet your mom, and I know what you are talking about. Last trip to Rwanda a few years ago, I was able to visit Kibuye, and I went to the village to meet Constantly mom and her auntie, and we spent a few hours together talking. I was listening to your mom's story. And after that, she gave me wonderful meal, like an amazing lunch. And then she walked me to the bus station. And later on, we spoke with Constantly, like she never leaving her house. It was really special experience to just meet her and listen to her. Even if we wasn't able to share the same language, we get opportunity to talk by your cousin who was translate this conversation. So thank you for be a part of this event. Thank you for organizing the celebration of the Independence Day in Bangladesh. Happy birthday, Bangladesh. I wish you all the best, especially to the core of this country, to the women, especially to the survivors. So as you mentioned previously, Shomo, I'm coming from Poland and my family is marked by the Holocaust experience. My grandmother survived Ravensbrück camp. It was a Nazi's camp in the north of Germany. She spent 2 years in the camp. She was subjected to the experimental treatment, and she was one of the a few women from the group what they call rabbits of Ravensbrück. She get injection of the phenol and she survived, but later on she was struggling with the consequences of this experiments when she was in the camp. And during the liberation, she was raped by the Russian soldiers. So she was waiting with hope for the day when she finally will be free. And the day on 29th of April came, she was raped by the liberators. So I'm saying my story for the last few years. When I start fully focus on my project, Rape, A History of Shame, and then I decide to write a book, Rape, A History of Shame, Diary of the Survivors. I'm sharing the story of my grandmother because for the generation of my grandmother and many other women from many different countries, it wasn't a good time for many of reasons, not only psychological, but also social, cultural, religion, to share their experience and their story. I feel like the story of rape during the war is really universal. It's always individual, but also universal. I remember my first experience when I was listening to my grandmother's story. I couldn't believe like she really experienced this level of cruelty, not only regarding her experimental experience, but also rape during the liberation. And when later on I went and I started working, because I spent some quiet time in Africa, I went to the refugee camp in Tanzania and I was able to listen. The first survivor who came from Rwanda, she was kidnapped and moved to Congo, and then she escaped and fled to a refugee camp in Tanzania. She shared with me her story. And I realized like her story, even with different background, different context, different time frame, is absolutely story of my grandmother. Later on, 50 years after my grandmother, experience, I'm sitting on a bench with a young woman, originally from Rwanda, and I am listening somehow my grandmother. So I become really active and engaged, not only as a psychoanalyst, not only as a clinician, but also as a feminist and human rights activist. And I start working on this topic and focus on this topic, trying to bring some awareness to my homeland, who is still in deny phase. And for many of reasons, that's actually really fascinating to see the country in the middle of Europe who is denying sexual violence during the war, Second War, for many of reasons. And it's really difficult to bring some kind of an awareness of the consequences of trauma, because unresolved trauma related to the sexual violence is affecting us deeply. It's affecting us psychologically, it's affecting our body. That is somehow part of my research and focus recently. I am, because I was able to interview 197 women from many different countries, all over the places, who share with me stories. And I realized like their story is still alive, even if this is the past. My grandmother's story affects 3 generations of our family, my mother, myself, and somehow I'm passing this testimony to my daughter. So how that's even possible? Because when we are losing our voice, when we are losing ability to openly share our story, our body is somehow shutting down, and we are unable to resolve from not only psychologically, but also physiologically level, the problem what we calling trauma or PTSD, or I am recently started calling this as a war rape survivor syndrome, really specific, designed to this specific experience. And part of this experience is related to body, right? You body or invited by the oppressor, and you body need to heal after that. You mind, you soul, you as a part of the community, but also, and that's maybe major part of this experience, you body need a time to heal, because you experiencing consequences of the violence in this physical level. So people who are working with epigenetics, that is the part of the knowledge, what we know right now, and especially in New York is something what is a lot of energy focused on. They are saying like all cells in our body is affected by this traumatic event forever. And we can, of course, change this somehow using our language, sharing our story, confront a perpetrator, changing the law, changing our society. But also, this is part of our personal healing. So I really feel like this is extremely important to share stories, to listen to the survivors, to stop judging and blaming, to bring to the justice the perpetrators and judge them and prosecute them, and not the survivors. Of course, the shame is the part of the cultural tool to shut down the survivors, because this is huge traumatic experience in this individual, but also collective level. So every single society affected by the war is struggling with the consequences of trauma. We are struggling with this individually, we are struggling with this as a families, but also we are struggling with this experience nationally. And depends of our approach, we can try to resolve this kind of trauma. We can prevent to the consequences of the transgenerational in the next generation, talking about and working on this part. Or we can see this, analyzing what is happening. For example, in Poland, when you're refusing to confront the consequences of Second War sexual violence. Actually, I think like last year when I started my project, when I started to be more vocal, I started providing some information, I was experiencing a lot of denial, not only about the Holocaust itself, but sexual violence itself. Like many people were saying to me, how dare you to share with us experience of your grandmother? She never allowed you. That's shame on you to bring something what is the secret of your family, what is the secret of the war. Time is healing. No, time is not healing. We are healing to be when we are active, when we are sharing, when we're working with others, when we are building society to support each other. But time itself is not healing anything. It's really important to remember that. And I think today, when we're celebrating independence of Bangladesh and we're celebrating of Birangona woman, I would love to ask you, because I love story of Birangona, and I was talking to Lesa, sharing with her, like, this is one of the most beautiful story for me, for many of reasons, but the fact, like, officially, the first time in the history, government of Bangladesh admit, like, the women are heroes, are war heroes, is major. So I would love for every single country, all over the places, to find in native language description for every single survivors. In Polish, I would love to say oh my goodness, now right now it's like English in my mind. So bohaterki wojenne, that would be in Polish language. So I'm curious how you can call Frida in Albanian.
Indeed, we have the case of for the first time after 18 years of the war, she spoke publicly. And now those days, this lady is becoming member of parliament. And she was, I think, she get it in the fifth, those who get it the most votes, she was ranked in the fifth. So we call it heroina, which is related with heroes also in our countries. And in that period of time when Vasiliya spoke publicly, she get award from president of the country as a hero, life hero, which had it impact in whole part of society, from a rural area to the institution. For 1 month, the debate in media was really dominating for the victims, because for a period of time, as I said, and I suppose also in Bangladesh and elsewhere, mainly invalids, veterans, missing people are dominating the discourse of the consequence of the war. Survivors are unknown, invisible, unheard. They are denied from societies. When we had this lady for the first time shared her stories, really had it a great impact. And from that time and now, those who are still speaking, not so much, we have only 3 of them. One of them, unfortunately, is not alive. We call it as a hero, and in our language, we call it heroina.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you can call in Kiruanda, Consoli Jane, how you will call the survivors in your original language, you know, like if you will translate Birangona to the Kiruanda.
So I'm going to let you take that one because I have no clue.
Well, maybe
I am sure like we can find, maybe that is something what we need to work on it.
We can even come up with the language. See, we don't even have the words to express this kind of status. So that is something we will work on our next episode maybe. And so now we are unfortunately running out of time. So Viola, I would ask you to just close today's event.
So I have a few words, if you don't mind. In December 1971, East Pakistan became the independent nation of Bangladesh after a 9-month war with West Pakistan and their local Bengali collaborators. Faced with a huge population of rape survivors, the new Bangladeshi government, 6 days, what you guys already mentioned, after the end of the war, publicly designed any woman raped in the war are Birangona. That's mean, as we already said, war heroine, as an attempt to reduce their local social ostracism. Even today, the Bangladeshi government a whole bold public effort to refer to the woman rape during 1971 as a Birangona is internationally unprecedented. Yet the term remains unknown in Bangladesh. But 50 years after the independence, the issue of genocide and rape during the liberation war remains unresolved, and the Bangladeshi state is seeking to redress this injustice through the War Crimes Tribunal. So we get really special opportunity today to meet all together and discuss this important topic regarding the Independence Day in Bangladesh, but also to discuss the consequences of every single rape and genocide all over the world, what is deeply related to the trauma, individual trauma, social trauma, and national trauma. And I strongly believe like somehow we can prevent for our kids and next generation to the consequences of this damage. Thank you everyone for being here to sharing stories. Thank you Bangladesh for your outstanding history of Birangona women. I would love to say to all of you, you are not alone. I am listening to the survivors. Everybody who is here will listen to your story. Remember that you are not alone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making us part of this this very timely and crucial discussion. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone. And I just want to say that on behalf of Women Chapter International, that we hope to continue our work globally so that wherever there are survivors, we wish to continue our work. And as powerful beacons in your own fields of work, we wish to continue that work with all of you, because your messages are powerful and they need to reach every little corner of the world. So we wish to work together, and maybe until we gather together the next time.
Thank you so much for today's dialogue or discussion, whatever we say. We'll meet again and again, I think. And we have to talk about this issue more and more. And maybe Shumo will conclude the session, or I can do it. Yes, because we are, WCI was trying to make a support center, support victim center, whatever we can name for this rape victim especially. And this is our first step to make this support center. And I hope we'll work together to make this one, because in Bangladesh, we don't have such support center where women can go and get the support, mental and physical and legal support. We need it very much. Thank you. Thank you everyone to be with us. Thank you so much. Haridi, do you want to say anything?
Thank you so much. And it was really, I was honored to be part of that. And I encourage you to establish such a center because it's more than needed. Maybe not for the first generation. I mean, they need support, but especially second generation.
Yes.
They are there and you have to support them. So I had a chance through Leslie to meet some of the heroines of Bangladesh. I don't remember. Yes, of Bangladesh.
Yeah, you met Anwara
yes.
Appa and Joveda Appa, yes.
And I felt so humble that they were able from Bangladesh to travel and to be present and to raise their voice internationally.
Yeah.
So I think as a human rights activist, as a woman, we are obliged to work and do more for them. So I encourage you when we are here to support you with any needs you may have in order to establish such an important center.
Because we believe that women is one tribe, so we have to help each other. And we don't have any countries, nothing. We don't have.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
See you
Thank
again.
you.
Bye.
Bye. See you soon,
Bye.
everyone.
See you soon. Yes,
Please.
next event, hopefully soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Stay safe, please.
Mhm.